Now that we've done that, let's jump into a couple of use cases on what we're trying to work with. Now, of course, we are under the impression that you have a lot of specific use cases here, but I'm going to just go ahead with a simple use case, and that goes into CO showcase specifically. Now, we see we have PC, CHIV, PC, and other aspects as well. And anyone who has worked in these data sets know what I'm talking about. But for the other folks, this is the guideline document that you have to relate to actually go through the validation use cases. So this is one that has been provided specifically for Colorado. And again, it's a 144-page document that goes through a tremendous detail of exactly what is required. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire document itself. What I've done is one step better, which is just create a few screenshots on what we're trying to expect from this. So as you'll see, there's a lot of variations that we have to look into. And when we're talking about a file, it's not just a validation of data. In fact, even the file needs to be validated. It needs to use the correct systems. It needs to be in the correct encoding, correct delimiters, correct file naming schemes, and everything in between as well. Even this part of the application, or in this case, the test case, will be validated by the application inherently. You see, we have plugins and customized code components which can take care of these type of validations inherently. And if you want to, say, edit them and add your own customizability, you can do that as well. This particular aspect of file format validation is done within our application in the plugin component. That's what you see as this particular system, where we actually get a lot of options for the end user to decide how they want to work on this particular file set. As you'll see, you get options to save them, to push to a particular data source and other aspects as well. And what this basically entails is once a particular file set has been validated, where do you want to push it? Of course, there's one caveat here as well that you can actually do, which is segregating your good and bad records. In my examples, you'll see that while we do apply all the rules which are present in the submission guideline, the application has a neat trick to segregate the good and bad records for you. Of course, the real nature of this particular problem statement requires you to fix the bad records, but having the set of bad records segregated on a rule level basis so that you're aware exactly what has failed and why this particular system has failed is very helpful for the end user. Also, the sheer list of parameters present right here, which can be automatically filled as well, really helps the end user to understand how exactly this particular application works, and of course, gives the end user a lot of control over what type of test case they would like to create. So now let's jump into what exactly we're looking at. You see, what we're looking at is a particular subset of a test case. There are a lot more complex test cases here as well. And what they get into are the different variety of file types and the different data rules associated with them. So if I go back to my slideshow again, you'll see that every particular file set, in this case, we'll be focusing on the pharmaceutical claims file set, has a lot of specific columns. These are the data elements associated, and these data elements are subject to rules. These rules are metadata rules, length rules, or something as the description for P005 defines, where the line for this particular service should start at 1 and should only increment if there's an additional claim defined. In the next page, we see that much more slides, and they have a lot of different variety of rules. In fact, my favorite one here is PC012, which actually goes in to understand what are different values for genders, which in this case is MFXU, which is pretty fine. But in other use cases where you have domains which are true, false, or not applicable, in that case, you will see a variety within the submission guide, where some cases you have true, false, and X, and in other cases you have true, false, and U instead of X. So as you can imagine, it's quite a headache for an end user to actually make sure that all the rules have been correctly applied here. What we do is that we create these rule sets inherently for you to use. And those rule sets are present right here. We have a complete set of rule sets, and these rule sets are the ones which are common across multiple states. And of course, within this particular showcase for Colorado, we have added a couple of Colorado-specific use cases as well. But the main gist here is twofold. Firstly, the example you're seeing is for a specific file type. So again, that's some caveats there. However, if you want to apply it en masse, all the rules that you see can be imported and exported. This implies that any custom rules that you make can also be easily deployed to multiple states and multiple files. We, however, use this template system to create the rules preemptively, and then depending on the state you're working with, define exactly what type of rule sets you would like to deploy altogether. Again, it's a simple process where you want to define what type of files you're working with. Are you working with those TXT files? Are you working with those data sets? And then correspondingly, just import the rules directly to run the system. It's as simple as that. There are wizards and programmatically generated test cases to help you speed up this process further. So let's take a quick look on what these particular rule sets are. Well, a few of them just want to make sure that there are no corresponding full stops within this particular data set. Some of them want to ensure that a particular zip ID is actually accurate. And so far, we're working with SQL. However, there are other tool sets as well, as you can see, which go into not SQL. So here you see there's a particular PC024D, which has this rule set that it should either be null or should be US. And instead of going for a SQL use case, what we've done is that we've used an operator. And this is not the only use case of operator that you'll see. You'll see the operators that the application provides inherently are quite varied and are built to withstand a lot more variety of use cases than just insurance claims, in this case, medical insurance claims. We deal with pharmaceutical claims, we deal with financial data sets, holdings companies, logistics, and a lot more. And so the list of operators, while it's pretty good that we provide inherently, can be expanded quite considerably as well. One of the use cases that you might see is that in many financial columns in the APCD dataset claiming guide, you'll have this requirement where a financial column cannot have, say, punctuations, cannot have commas, cannot have currency signs as well. And so these rule sets can be combined together to create a very simple operator, and the application and end user can just deploy the operator as is. But of course, in this case, you don't even have to go ahead to do that. You can just import the rules as is. The next one that I want to elaborate with while showcasing these screens and while showcasing this different type of rule sets is that you as an end user get complete control over what has been deployed. Yes, the kind of philosophy of ours is to help you set this up as quickly as possible and so that you can use it directly within your system. However, if you want to define something, if you want to customize something, and if you want to change something in bulk, in scale, you get complete control over that. And that's one of the critical things. Of course, the rule sets themselves are quite varied and quite considerably large. I mean, this is a subset of what we are looking at. So let's see what the end users actually sees in this. And just to give you a brief overview of what we are trying to do with these systems, you see what we are trying to do is that we are opening a particular file that has supposed to be sent out. And we are firstly validating the file inherently, defining where the good and bad records will be stored in, how exactly they'll be stored in. And then once these are loaded in, for the sake of simplicity for the user, we choose to rename them as we expected. Again, even renaming here, while you can define custom expressions, you can, of course, use simple rename conditions that we have defined. Again, you have complete control here. In fact, if you would like to run SQL nodes, Scala nodes, Python nodes, any custom scripts, you have complete control. The validation that we are looking at this point is a rule-based validation. However, within this particular subscreen of the application, you see that the application is capable of a lot more. We can do reconciliation of data, the entire record set, metrics, a bit of multiple data comparisons, and of course, a good chunk of BI validations as well. And since the application is customizable even in this particular stage, the test cases you define are completely within your control and your space. That's what's basically is happening here. We have a couple of files being combined, and then another set of rules that we run here, which are a lot more conditional rules, which go into the civic validation specifically and thresholds in comparison. So these rules actually take into account the thresholding, which is specific to this state and the specific file, which can change based on your requirement. Hence, the civic threshold comes in from a specific file set itself. And in another use case, we are actually validating the raw file itself that we have generated. So now that we have done all of this, let's see what it looks as from the end user perspective. Every run that you do is going to be saved. We're going to keep track of any parameters that you might have defined. We're going to keep track of every run detail, including the duration, checkpoints, and other aspects. But as an end user, what you're going to get is a nice report that can be customized as well. It is going to contain all the details of what exactly has happened. Here, you'll get the details of what was the exact definition of what you were trying to run. You also get details on what were the different type of rules that you're trying to work with as well. So here we see that there's a lot of rules which have failed and a lot of rules which have succeeded. There are good failures where expected length has been kind of pushed ahead more than expected. There are rules where there are other things missing. And so each of them have been given specific records and rule sets. And since this is an example, we have gone in with absolutes. However, if there were only a couple of records which have been mismatched, those will be segregated and the score will be defined accordingly. Finally, if there are no corresponding failures, the application just calls out that this particular rule set is perfectly fine and the data set is also perfectly correct. Going back to what we were showcasing earlier, let me just go that one. Yeah. You'll see that within our application, it's not just this particular aspect. This particular rule set is not the end. What you can choose to do, of course, is add a lot more components to your system. I'm going to go into plugins right here. And I want to make sure that, well, we can raise Jira tickets automatically in case rules are failing. So that's exactly what I do. I can add, of course, some specific configurations, but what this looks like from an end user perspective is, let me just rename this once. These Jira tickets. There you go. What this looks like from the end user perspective is that, well, now even a bit of my DataOps or DevOps process is automated. The automation and the integrations don't stop here. If you're using an existing integration tool sets like maybe Airflows, or if you're using Azure DevOps or pipelines, the application has bidirectional connectivity with not just the ones I mentioned, but a lot more types of integration pipelines as well. It's not just Jira tickets. We're working with Slack notifications, we work with Teams notifications, and a lot of other aspects as well. There's a lot of things that we have packed within this product that we don't really have the time to get into. But this particular example should be just an illustration or kind of a sneak peek into what the product is capable of. Once again, what you've seen is an example for one specific use case. Once we get into the gist of things, you'll have to deploy these type of validations across multiple states, across multiple systems altogether. And that is where the scale of the application and the automation aspects really come in. And that's basically what justifies the numbers that GB was showcasing at the start, where an 80% reduction is TCO is because we have automated most of the things for the end user. And all they have to do in most cases is, in some cases at least, just review them. However, even that can be automated to a good chunk. And look at the results and see exactly what this particular data sets have wrong. Of course, there's reconciliation pipelines as well, but for now, I will take a pause on that and give this back to GB to see if there are any questions. And of course, if there are any other aspects, we can have a deep dive in them specifically if needed.
Thank you, Shivanshu.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. So yes, we do have a couple of questions. First is what sort of customization can be done with these rules, and can we add our own rules as well?
Absolutely. The rule set that you're working with right here is a defined rule set, yes, but however, the templates that you're working with can be customized to your own use cases as well. You can add n number of rules and you can customize them to a great degree. And this is not just SQL expression and attribute rules. You can add your own type of rules as well with the preordained list of operators, which can be expanded and customized as well. So the customization is not just with regards to the rule set, it's also with regards to what you want to do before or after the validation. So customization and keeping it open is one of the philosophies of the product.
Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions? Please reach us. Contact@datagaps.com.